first, I want to talk a little bit about so-called truth-telling, defamation, and a football club that is facing a seven-figure payout for facilitating both. The Hawthorn Football Club is going to pay dearly for the role it played in the vilification of three former employees, player development manager Jason Burt, Alastair Clarkson, who is now the senior coach at the Kangaroos, and Chris Fagan, who is now senior coach at the Lions. Now, this catastrophe began when Hawthorn appointed an activist to complete what it called a cultural safety review, what became known as the Racism Report, which was then leaked to the ABC. And so just a few days before last year's grand final, the national broadcaster broke a shocking story of racism at the Hawthorn Football Club. The ABC painted the three men as monsters responsible for racist bullying and human rights abuses. The rest of the media weren't far behind, all eager to outdo each other with reporting that often amounted to race-baiting hyperbole. Now, it's worth noting that this report was questionable from the start. Quite obviously, not a single non-Indigenous or non-Maori individual was even interviewed. It was an activist report seemingly designed to find racism, whether it existed or not, and that's precisely what it did. The result was utterly devastating for the three men who categorically denied the allegations, but that didn't matter. This was truth-telling, and to question it or even seek further information was monstrous.
But when three people have made similar accusations...
Well, there's five people, actually. Three
that
different
is true.
families, yeah.
That
There's
is
five
true.
people.
But the Indigenous community has been persecuted for so long. And this is yet another example of it. Yet we don't say, I'm concerned, I'm worried. These human beings have been violated.
Over at Channel 9, veteran reporter Caroline Wilson even attacked Alastair Clarkson for releasing a statement proclaiming his innocence. She said that was combative and ill-advised. She also wrote in The Age of Hawthorn's racist past and called what were untested, often self-serving allegations the greatest scandal to engulf the AFL. Really? Did we already forget about the Essendon fiasco? Now, Wilson also wrote this about Phil Egan, the activist Hawthorn had commissioned to complete the report. Only the unusual mixture of blunt but sensitive questioning undertaken by Egan and his team could have led to this. Phil Egan has since been hit with more than 70 criminal charges after a fraud investigation into his involvement with the Murray Valley Aboriginal Cooperative. Egan denies any wrongdoing and is innocent until proven guilty. That's how it's supposed to be in a civilised nation. But when it came to the former Hawthorn trio, there was no such restraint. All three were forced to take leave from their respective roles. And most footy pundits did not expect Clarkson and Fagan to return to their senior coaching roles. But the witch hunt wasn't restricted to the football media. We had Greens leader Adam Bant posting this. He said the reports of racist and sexist coercion at Hawthorn are sickening. ABC regular Jess Maguire joined in. She tweeted, "There is simply no way to justify any of Clarkson's behaviour. It's like a horror film." Any notion of due process was gone. The men were deemed guilty. The trio were repeatedly defamed as racists, bigots, bullies on social media, and the impact of that was devastating. For Alastair Clarkson, the stress became too much, and this year he was forced to again take leave from the game. Now, despite enormous pressure from the AFL, the men refused to come to some sort of a cushy deal and admit to being culturally insensitive to make this go away. They maintained their innocence, and in the end, the AFL's independent inquiry ended with no adverse findings against Alastair Clarkson, Chris Fagan or Jason Burt. Now, the Hawthorn Football Club faces a massive payout to Alastair Clarkson, who is exercising his legal options. The Hawks board and former president Jeff Kennett can say all they like about acting in good faith and following correct procedures, but they began this catastrophe by commissioning that flawed report and having Phil Egan complete it. It's little comfort to the three men whose good names were slandered far and wide that the club acted incompetently rather than with malice. Hawthorn's ineptness is not a defence. But there is a bigger lesson here. This is what happens when the onus of proof is reversed, when the notion of innocent until proven guilty is abandoned, and due process is seen as cruel or racist. Truth-telling cannot be a one-way street.